Will was laughing, genuinely laughing. Millions watched it happen. Then, in less than 2 seconds, he was on stage. The slap heard around the world. What the cameras didn't show, what they couldn't show, was the exact moment Will Smith looked at his wife's face and something inside him detonated. Jada has since admitted she was shocked he reacted that way, but she also revealed something else. Something that, when you hold it up against Will's own childhood, makes that night look completely different. Because what happened on that stage didn't start with a joke. It started 50 years ago, when a boy in West Philadelphia watched his father hurt his mother and made a silent vow he would spend his entire life trying to keep. And when a girl in Baltimore learned that the safest thing you can do with pain is hide it behind a face that gives nothing away. By the end of this, you might realize you've seen that exact pattern before. Not on a stage, closer. March 27, 2022, Chris Rock steps up to present. He ad-libs about Jada. G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it. The room laughs. Will laughs. You can see it in his shoulders, open, at ease. Then the director cuts to Jada. Her expression is unmistakable. Not just irritated, walled off. There's a heaviness to it, a retreat. The broadcast stays on her for barely 2 seconds. When the image returns to Will, he's already rising, already moving. What happened inside that cut? The world has argued ever since. An insult? A marriage pushed too far? A performance for the cameras? But the people who study human behavior point towards something deeper, something that started long before either Will or Jada knew each other's names. To find it, we have to leave the Oscars entirely and go back about 50 years. Jada Pinkett Smith grew up in Baltimore. Her mother struggled with addiction. Stability was rare. She has said that she learned very young that if you showed pain, people used it against you. If you cried, you got hurt more. So she built a face that revealed nothing. Composed, controlled, armored. That face protected her for decades. It made her formidable in Hollywood, but there is a side effect to armor that strong. The people closest to you can't always tell when you're bleeding underneath. By the time the Oscars arrived, the armor had been tested repeatedly. The alopecia, the public dissection of her marriage, the global mockery. And when Chris Rock aimed a joke at her hair, Jada's face didn't just react to him. It defaulted to its oldest setting, the wall, the retreat, the signal. I will not let them see me break. Will, sitting inches away, saw it immediately. Not just irritation, withdrawal. The woman next to him disappearing behind a mask he had been trying to reach through for years. And that specific signal activated something in him that had nothing to do with Chris Rock. 200 miles away, around the same time Jada was learning to hide her pain, another child was learning a different survival lesson. Will Smith was 9 when he watched his father assault his mother. He froze. He did nothing. In his memoir, he writes, "Within everything that I have done since then, the awards, the spotlights, the characters, the laughs, there has been a subtle string of apologies to my mother for my inaction that night." That sentence unlocks something critical. The Fresh Prince, the charmer, the man who walks into a room and makes everyone feel safe. That wasn't just a personality. It was a correction. A promise made by a 9-year-old. I will never be frozen again. I will protect. Trauma researchers have observed this pattern repeatedly. A child who feels utterly helpless in one moment may spend the rest of their life unconsciously building an identity to prevent that feeling from returning. The script runs quietly, often unnoticed by the person living it, until something activates it. At the Oscars, Jada's face was the trigger. Not because she asked for protection, but because her expression, walled off, wounded, looked to Will's nervous system exactly like the moment he had been trying to undo since childhood. Someone he loved was hurting, and he was just sitting there. He didn't think. The thinking brain was too slow. His body moved on a 50-year-old instruction, and so he protected. Too late, too violently, at the wrong target. But the impulse itself was older than his career, older than his marriage, older than almost everything the public knew about him. In his apology video, He said he was going through something that had nothing to do with Chris. He wasn't deflecting, he was explaining as plainly as he could.
My behavior was unacceptable. I spent the last 3 months replaying and understanding the nuances and the complexities of what happened in that moment.
There is a third pattern in this triangle, and it is just as revealing. Chris Rock grew up in Brooklyn, bused to a white school where he was beaten and isolated. He learned early that fighting back physically would only make his situation worse, so he sharpened his mind instead. Observation, words as defense, emotional distance as survival. When the slap landed, look at his body. He doesn't raise a hand, he doesn't step back. He absorbs the impact, stays on his feet, and continues speaking almost unnaturally calm.
That was a greatest night in the history of television. Okay.
That composure wasn't shock. It was a survival reflex equally as deep as Will's escalation. Absorb, process, keep the show moving. Rock later waited a full year to address the incident publicly, and when he did, his words weren't revenge. They were the observations of someone who recognized he had been caught in the crossfire of something much older than a joke.
Will Smith practices selective outrage. Everybody knows what the happened. Everybody that really knows I had nothing to do with that shit. I didn't have any entanglements.
3 people, 3 survival strategies, all of them working exactly as they were built to, colliding under the brightest lights on Earth. You will probably never be on the Oscar stage, but you have almost certainly lived through your own version of that missing second. It happens fast. A certain tone of voice, a message read twice, a feeling of being dismissed, and before you know it, you've reacted. Too much, too quickly. And later, you wonder what took over. There is a phenomenon researchers call an amygdala hijack. Your brain's threat detection center, shaped by your earliest experiences, fires before your rational mind can intervene. It does not see the present clearly. It sees an echo of the past, and it acts. The tragedy of that night is not that someone was evil. It is that 3 intelligent, self-aware people were still running old scripts under the brightest lights on Earth. Not because they were weak, because this is what unresolved patterns do. They wait. The question the footage leaves us with is not whose side are you on. It is something quieter. What is the script you are still running? And could you learn to see it coming before it speaks for you? If something in this story landed closer than you expected, you are not alone. The comment section is filled with people who saw themselves somewhere in that triangle. If you recognized the protector who finally erupted, drop a W. If you've ever built walls so high, even the people who love you couldn't see the pain, drop a J. And if you found yourself simply trying to absorb and keep moving, drop a C for Chris. I read these and I learn from them. The cameras never showed the exact moment Will saw Jada's face, but by now you have seen what was moving underneath it. Not the footage, the architecture, the decades of wiring that made that second inevitable. Now, I've spent most of this video walking through Will's side, because he's the one who stood up. But the truth is, I've only scratched the surface of what was really going on inside Jada that night. Her story is far deeper than the headlines ever captured. And Chris Rock's reaction might be the most psychologically revealing of all. If you want those deep dives, let me know in the comments. The demand for those videos will decide if they get made. If this way of looking at the world, past the surface, into the wiring beneath, is something you want more of, subscribe. There are more moments to decode, more patterns hiding in plain sight. If you made it this far, I thank you and hope to see you in the next one.